This is the Wired Educator Podcast, episode 260, Leading with Heart, Hustle, and Pride. I'm sitting down with my friend and colleague, Mark Bagley, the superintendent of Wert Schools. We're diving deep into what it truly means to be a servant leader, an educational leader, a superintendent of a school district, how to build a winning culture, and why the best classroom might actually be the sidewalk during bus duty. You're absolutely going to love this episode. Buckle up.
Welcome to the Wired Educator Podcast, where it's all about becoming a better educator now so you can make a greater impact and enjoy a higher quality lifestyle. And now, your host, Kelly Croy.
Welcome back to the Wired Educator Podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Croy, and I'm glad you're here for episode 260. Today, we have a powerhouse guest, Mark Bagley. Mark is the superintendent of Wert Schools in Ohio, and he's the real deal. A genuine, authentic leader who isn't afraid to pick up a broom, a snow shovel, or whatever to serve his district. We're going to talk about his journey from being a basketball-first student to a teacher-first, student-first leader, how he stepped into the superintendent role literally the day the world shut down in March of 2020. We're also going to talk about the incredible CEO Career Education Opportunities program they've built at Wert. You're going to learn about the ERO mindset and why we is greater than me. I'm excited to share my interview with Mark, but first, there's a few things I want to tell you about. It was a great week to be a Wired educator. I had the absolute honor of being invited to Gibsonburg Schools for their upcoming literacy night. I'm sharing my book, Unthink Before Bed, with their families and their students, and it's going to be a blast. I'm going to talk about the books that I loved as a kid and why reading matters so much. I'm going to read my story, Unthink Before Bed, a children's book on anxiety and mindfulness to the group. And I'm going to do a live drawing of some of the characters in the book. But the real star of the show just might be my dog, Jedi, who is featured in the book. He'll come out in a tie, meet everyone, maybe show off a few tricks. And the best part for me, I absolutely love that the people who brought me in pre-ordered copies of my book for the families and for the kids. It's a truly cool moment for me in education. Thank you, Gibsonburg Schools. Also, I have a coaching client that has also become a really good friend, and she's finishing up her book, and I'm so incredibly proud of her. I can't wait to celebrate and promote what she's done. I've helped many educators transition from educator to leadership roles, start podcasts, speak from the stage, publish books, all kinds of things. If you're interested in starting a journey like that, I hope you'll reach out to me at kelly@kellycroy.com. I have a survey that I'll send you and a cohort that's about to start up in several selected areas that I just talked about over the next 90 days. And I would love to have you join us. We are all just educators trying to get better and make a greater impact. I also want to shout out to Joe Miller for organizing the third annual CL Symposium at Port Clinton City Schools. The energy was electric and the speakers were top tier. Joe did a fabulous job. And if you missed it, go back a few episodes and listen to my interview with Joe Miller about the symposium. And I have an upcoming interview with a couple of the speakers that were at the symposium. Speaking of live events, I recently did a live broadcast, of the Wired Educator Podcast in front of a live audience. The episode is coming up, and it features Casey Cuny. We talked about rigor and relationships in the age of AI, and man, we really connected. You don't want to miss that one. Also on the horizon, an interview with Mark Perna. He's the author of Answering Why. It focuses on career and life skills. I got to see Mark present at the beginning of the school year, and he's fabulous. I hope our district gets to work with him. And I just wrapped up a conversation the other night with Ben Johnson and Bobby Dodd about their book, Intentional Influence, and it's they talk about culture mapping, which is a concept we go into pretty good detail on, but you're going to need a copy of their book. I can't wait to share that episode out with you as well. If you're looking for an opening day speaker or someone to help your teachers level up or your leaders to become greater leaders, make a difference in the lives of students and families in the community, I would love to visit your district. Please check out kellycroy.com for more info. It was a great week. And now, here is my interview with Mark Bagley, Superintendent of Van Wert Schools. He's about to share some of the incredible leadership wisdom and guidance with us all. Here we go. We talk about lots of takeaways of servant leadership, ERO, his CEO program. Relationships without rules equals rebellion. Today's kids aren't buying it, and they want to know why. They want to know that you care. That's a quote from the interview, and it's my honor and my privilege to introduce to you Mark Bagley. Mark Bagley is the superintendent of Van Wert Schools, where he began serving on August 1st, 2020. He is currently in his 6th year in his role, and he brings 33 years of experience in public education to the district. Prior to becoming superintendent, Mark served Van Wert City Schools in a variety of instructional and administrative roles. He was principal at Van Wert Middle School for 12 years, assistant principal for 3 years, and he was an elementary principal for 2 years. Before his administrative leadership, he taught middle school mathematics for 10 years, both at Van Wert Middle School and Ottoville local schools. In addition to his teaching and leadership roles, coached basketball at the Van Wert City School District for 26 years, demonstrating a long-standing commitment to students both in and out of the classroom. Mark earned his Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education from Taylor University and his master's degree in Educational Administration from the University of Dayton in 2013. He completed his superintendent license through the University of Dayton in 2015, and he's an active professional and community member. He is part of the Buckeye Administration of School Administrators, a member of the Van Wert Rotary Club, and has served on various local boards across Van Wert County throughout his career. Bagley is deeply committed to cultivating a positive and inclusive school environment that celebrates student achievement and staff excellence. Learn more about the district's work to foster a strong school culture at the Cougar Culture page. Link will be in the show notes. He resides in Van Wert, Ohio with his wife, Rachel, and their 2 children, Drew, an engineer at Garmin Miller, and his daughter, Maria, a junior at the Ohio State University. I can't wait to share with you and listen and learn with Mark as we explore leadership at a very high level. Thanks for listening. Here's Mark. This is the Wired Educator Podcast. I'm excited tonight. Got a good friend, colleague, a great leader in Ohio, Mark Bagley. He's the superintendent of Van Wert Schools. We're going to learn a lot about what it takes to lead a district and to make a difference in the lives of our colleagues and children. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Kelly, for having me. And it looks like for you, it's kind of a landmark here. 11 years and 3 days doing podcasts. And I finally made it in the top 300. I'm 259, I think.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I hope to hit 1,000. So you're going to be in the top third. Thank you very much. Wow. You know, Mark, I've had all kinds of guests on the show, and some published books. I one time had a young lady who hadn't even graduated from college yet, and it was she was doing her student teaching during the pandemic, which is right when you became superintendent at Van Wert Schools. So I definitely want to learn about what it took to become leader of a school district right in the middle of a pandemic. So we're going to hit that. But I'm excited to have you on because you're what I consider a genuine and authentic leader. And you're also somebody that I can pick up the phone and ask a question to. And I host this podcast for 3 important reasons. 1, I want to get better, Mark. I want to learn from you what it takes to become a great leader. 2, I want to help my school district of Port Clinton City Schools. And 3, I want to share great ideas with the world. So let's go back in time a little bit, Mark. I'd like to know, what kind of student were you? I'm guessing you were a pretty good basketball player, maybe, right? Because you coached for a long time. And I want to know when you knew you wanted to become an educator and a leader of schools?
It took me a while to become a good student, Kelly. I was a very average student. In fact, basketball was a lot more important to me than education. And it took some failure. I really wanted to go play basketball in college at Taylor University under legendary coach Paul Patterson. And what happened is I was denied Taylor twice because of grades. And it took me 3 times to get in. And I ended up not playing basketball. My dad had a heart attack, and back then he actually was at a children's conference. We actually drove to Port Clinton, of all places, where he was in the hospital. We had no cell phones there. And I kind of made a decision there that, you know what, I really had a great high school career, but I was ready to go into college. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, though. I'll be honest. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I liked being around kids. I liked basketball, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do at that time.
Yeah. So somewhere in college, you decided to go into education?
Yeah, my brother-in-law, who's one of my big influencers in education, he just retired, actually, from Taylor. Won multiple national championships as a cross-country coach, a phenomenal teacher. He really was all about growth mindset. He really was about preferred reading choice, children's literature. And we were talking about education one day, and I said this fatal phrase, and I use this now. I said, man, I think I want to become a teacher so I can coach. And he absolutely stopped me dead in my tracks and said, Mark, absolutely not. You're a teacher first, and the sporting world can help teach kids and yourself life lessons, but that's not why you go into education. You go in to become an educator first, a coach second, and I never forgot that. And that was a big influence on me going into education. Of course, my dad was a middle school teacher turned children's home director. My mom taught kindergarten. My brother was a 40-year teacher at Crestview in our county, and my sister taught elementary in both Van Wert and Indiana. And my other brother taught college classes. So we were a family of educators. And the most amazing story is my grandfather, who one year he was a middle school principal, a middle school basketball coach, a custodian. His secretary got sick. He became a secretary, and he taught a class. And so that's where I really learned about what it meant to be a total educator from my family. My family was a huge influence in me going into this great profession.
Wow. I guess it's kind of like the mob. You were destined to be an educator. You didn't know it yet. You were trying to find a different route. Well, the education world's glad you did, Mark. That's awesome. That's great.
I've been so fortunate to have so many mentors, and I'll talk about those people, during this podcast, because that's been a huge factor in me becoming a servant leader for Van Wert.
Yeah. Now, we've collaborated a little bit in the past, and you used that phrase before, and I think you were just talking about your grandfather. That's where you kind of got the passion for being a servant leader. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people say that. That's a great interview answer, right? That's a great phrase to use when we're out talking with other people. But what does it mean to you, Mark, as you serve your district right now, to be a servant leader?
To me, with over 300 employees and over 2,000 students, I'm the least important person. Everybody else goes before me. And I would never do something or ask somebody to do something I wouldn't do myself. And that can mean picking up trash outside the building. That can mean sweeping the floor. That can mean just going in the classroom when there's no subs and helping. It's when you put everybody else above yourself. That to me is what a servant leader is. And I don't care what position you are in. And superintendent, we're a blue collar town. We're a blue collar city. In the days of me sitting in the office with my suit and 4 pens in my pocket, that's just not realistic in Van Wert, Ohio. And frankly, I don't think anywhere.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I love that. My best friend, Richard Baird, is the superintendent at East Knox School. I don't know if you've ever crossed paths with them. And I was scrolling through Facebook one night, and he's sitting on a snow plow machine, and he's plowing the sidewalks of his school. And Mark, as I see you right now, I can see you doing jobs like that. Can you share with me some of the things you've done in the past, maybe that other superintendents might shy away from?
Well, I think it all starts when I got hired. I mean, my final interview was on March 12th, 2020. And if you remember that day, that was the day.
That's the day before we closed, right?
Yeah, the governor came on, and I remember I was a middle school principal, and I was behind closed doors all day. It was right before spring break, our spring break, and we had all kind of discipline issues. And the kids on the way to the buses told me that we're off for 3 weeks. 3 weeks we're off school for to stop the spread. And that ended up becoming the rest of the year. The next morning, I accepted the job on Friday the 13th. That was our last day in school. So I tried, our very best to be a middle school principal and delivering assignments we delivered assignments to kids and did all those things. And I was I was in the superintendent's office by April 1st. So I was trying to do middle school principal, learn the superintendency. Fortunately, every superintendent was in the same boat. We didn't know what the heck we were doing, and we were just trying to figure it out. And there were lots of Zooms that we talked for hours and hours and hours, planning something that should take 5 minutes, but took 5 hours. And so that was something that I think was really unusual that I did. Just all the hours on Zoom planning for things that we had no idea what we were doing.
Sure. Wow, that's just amazing to me. I think as long as I live, I'll look back during that pandemic and just scratch our heads. It was the most insane times in education that I can think of. But you must have done a great job because here you are.
Well, I think, communication was the key, and just to be transparent and be honest and real. Sometimes we can outcoach ourselves and try to get wordy and flowery, and you can really do that now with AI. But back then there wasn't really AI. We had to do the best we could with what we had, and so you relied on people. I relied on people like your boss, Pat Atkins. Pat Atkins was a huge influence on me getting the Van Wert job. We go back 33 years ago. Pat and I worked together back in Ottoville, our first job, and so it's been a long, windy road. But people like Pat Atkins were a huge influence on me, just on positive energy, on enthusiasm, on leadership, getting to know kids, being in the trenches. Again, like I said, no job is beneath me. I know Pat would feel the same way about him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It was crazy times for us. Pat's a great guy, and I knew about you guys working together. I love working for him. One thing I really like about both of you is that despite how well you do, despite how much you learn, you're always wanting to learn more and do more. And I think that's a hat tip to both of you. So thank you for that. So your leadership team, Pat and I hosted a Grow Your Leaders. And I remember the response from Van Wert was phenomenal. Like you had a strong presence. And I think that speaks a lot to your leadership, Mark, that you want to grow leaders. You want to create a winning culture. I believe you use the words of inclusion, right? And a lot of passion there. What is a great culture to you, and how do you grow your people?
Well, we've really bought into the E plus R equals O in the Focus 3. Pat actually hooked me up with that too as well, and we did some things with that. But we really thought that to grow leaders, you have to first encourage them to get out there and see other leaders how they do it. And when Pat had introduced that program to me, Grow Your Leaders, I sent it out to our 16 administrators, and people were overwhelming. I said, this is a different voice than me. You're going to learn some different things. I think it's important to not just experience your own culture, but other people's culture and what matters to them, and how do you learn from others? Because I think as lifelong learners, that's something my parents always taught me, that we have to keep on learning. That's why I read so much. And even when I heard you speak last year at the SEL that you guys did at Port Clinton, I actually won a book from you, Along Came a Spider. and I consistently reference things in there about leadership and communication and how important those things are. So we just really focus on how can we learn outside of our district, and then take a tremendous amount of pride in what we can do internally with our own professional development. Because I think so many times we get caught up on a one speaker one day, and all of a sudden your culture changes. That's climate. That's a climate thing. Right. Culture is sustained over a long period of time, but learning from others that have great culture, you can pick up nuggets. And I always say, if you can go to conferences and get 1, 2, or 3 nugget and you bring it back, then that just spreads like wildfire.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. And thank you for not walking out on my session. And I forgot that you'd won a book. That's fantastic. So, Mark, I'd have to think when you interviewed for the job, one of the questions that might have come up was, you graduated from here, and that could probably work in your favor. That could also probably work against you a little bit. And I'm also thinking, you're going to lead. Now you're going to be the leader of the district. of people you worked side by side. Was that a challenge for you, or was that a help to have done that?
That's a great question, Kelly. I thought a lot about that because, in different roles that you have as a teacher, assistant principal, and a head coach, sometimes a head coach on the sideline, they're evaluated more than anybody in the district.
Yes.
2,000 people on a Friday, Saturday night evaluating your performance.
Right.
And I was when I was younger, a very animated coach. I grew up as I get older, but some people have that, hey, he's all fired up all the time. And I'm not, but that's the perception because of what you see on Friday and Saturday night.
Sure.
So I spent a lot of time on just really expressing my vision for the district, how I wanted to see it go to the next step. I worked for an unbelievable superintendent for 10 years. And before that, how I got started, he was my elementary principal.
Okay.
And so it came full circle, and lots of my education stories are full circle stories. And when he left, we had 2 superintendents in 3 years at Van Wert. And I felt like I was a ping pong ball. And that's no disrespect to anybody. But I said I either have to, A, stop complaining about what's happening, or B, go for the job and stick my head in there. It's not, I don't like the phrase, throw your name into the ring or the hat in the ring. No, that's not, no, it's preparation. And I prepared as if I didn't know anything about Van Wert. I went headfirst into that with an open mind so that people can see me unemotionally for who I really was and how much passion I had for Van Wert, how much I love Scarlet and Gray, how much I love Cougars. And I think through that process, I was able to come out and I was just appreciative of all the mentors along the way that helped me get to that position. There's times now, 6 years later, maybe it wasn't the best move as you go through some of the hardships.
Yeah.
As I get advices from people, but it's been a great ride and 33 years, man. There right now, there's only good memories that I can share with you and people that are listening.
Yeah. You're definitely, I mean, my office is 5 feet from Pat's. So I see the number of challenges a superintendent's got to face within the first 2 hours of the day. It is amazing. And sometimes I totally get it. And sometimes I scratch my head wondering why someone wants to become a superintendent of a district, because it is a lot. It is an awful lot. But for you, it was just the passion you had for the school itself.
It was, and there were some things that I really wanted to accomplish for our school. As I want to leave it better than I found it. That's something that's really important to me in anything I do. Whether it was a locker room as a coach, I wanted to leave that locker room better than we found it, and that's a life lesson for teams. I want to leave a gym better than I found it. I want to leave any space that I'm in, and anybody that I teach and touch better than I found it. And that's very important to me and that's part of that lifelong learning and growing and all those things. And I think Joe Sanfilippo says it best, and he was on your show a couple episodes again, and we use this phrase a lot. Let's give ourselves a chance. If we are present, if we are engaged, if we are active learning, if we're growth mindset, we're giving ourselves a chance. If we use the phrase we've always done it this way, or I don't think we're going to change this. I think we're going to keep on doing this. This has worked really good for the last 30 years. If we get in that mindset, nothing's going to change. And we have to have the mindset of growth that, dang it, man, we're going to do things differently. We're going to be innovation. And, we ask this question again, what does good instruction look like? That's really important as we get into these challenging times, as we know, of AI and just social emotional trauma, blended families, just lots of things happening in today's world that are distractions, including technology, cell phones, and all kind of other things on TV with what's going on in our world right now.
Yeah, I'll bet. Did you guys have a lot of fog your way this morning?
We did, and weather's been tricky in Van Wert County this year. We've had some late fog, some late snow, and when you go on time and it comes late, everybody has an answer. I've even been accused of sitting in my brand new house, looking out the window, drinking coffee, making decisions. But that's part of being a leader. You have to take the good and the bad, and you can't worry about all those things. The bottom line is you want to do what's best for everyone. And sometimes the decisions you make, people can argue those things. It's just like being a coach. I see so many similarities between coaching and being a superintendent.
That's
There
a
are
good
lots
point,
of armchair quarterbacks that have lots of answers.
Yeah, there sure are. Well, I know one thing for sure. A superintendent's day starts earlier than everybody else's and ends later than everybody else's. That is for sure. Your family, being so many different forms of educators and leaders, has to be just incredibly proud of you. And that's got to be a driving force in the way you lead, because you're representing your family and the district that you've been a part of for so long. I think 33 years in education itself. I mean, that's a career and a half right there. I'm curious, you won a copy of my book, Along Came a Leader. I got 6 core tenets that I lean heavily on, and I use those. Really, that's how I navigate. I'm curious, just you personally, Mark, what are some qualities of leadership that are just part of your DNA, and maybe you look for them when you do hires at your school?
I think I talk a lot about gold standards versus goals. And I kind of stole that from Mike Krzyzewski when he had a dream team after they had failed a little bit there for a while in the Olympics. And I think gold standards are much more attainable than goals, because it's more centered on the whole team versus just like writing down goals.
Yeah.
I was a former math teacher. I'm big on equations, and I think the greatest equation of all time is we is greater than me. I talk about that all the time, and I use the phrase love, serve, care a lot. If you do those 3 things, how can things go wrong? I also love to talk about perspective, parent, truth. I use that phrase, perspective, parent, truth.
Tell me about that.
And I've studied this a lot about the loss of the American father. If I did do my doctorate, that would be one of the things I wrote it on. But I think so many parents put all their trust and faith in how good their kids are in school or how well they do in sports. And really, your leadership as a parent and your goal as a parent is not how good your kids are at school or at sports. It's really about what kind of person they are. How hard do they work? And do they give their best effort? And that was something my dad talked after every basketball game. He never critiqued my play at all. He always asked these things to me. That's all he asked. Did you work hard and give your best effort? Were you a great teammate? Did you have fun? My dad was consistent with that every single time. It never deviated if I played terrible or I played great. And that's, something that I really cherish, that I have memories from my dad, that was really, really important to him, to not judge me based on how good I was at school or sports. I'll never forget, I came home my sophomore year and I was on a team that was going to the state Final Four. It was the first team in Van Wert history, 1987. We had beaten Willard in a double overtime game that was one for the ages, and my grades were not good that 9 weeks. I was focused, even though I wasn't really playing, I was on the team. It was all about basketball. It was,
Sure.
the movie Hoosiers was out. We watched Hoosiers as a team, first Van Wert team to go to state. And I remember bringing my grade card home, and my dad was sitting in our family room, and he asked to see my grade card. And he looked at it, and there was about a minute pause that seemed like an hour. And he asked me this question: is that the best you can do? That's all he said.
Yeah.
And I said, no, Dad, I can do better. And I grabbed that grade card and I scurried out of there. But that meant that still rings true to me today, because I think sometimes as parents, as I talk about that parent perspective truth, how we respond to our students at school, how we respond to our own kids at home, that's a big deal, because we don't know what they're going through. And I think there's a book, we focus a lot on SEL, social emotional learning. There's a book by Dr. Bruce Perry, when we prescribe to what Dr. Bruce Perry teaches. And he wrote a book that says, what happened to you? So many times we ask questions to kids in school is, what's wrong with you? We really should say what happened to you. And I'll tell you a short story about that in the book. There was a small fire in a trash can. And for that teacher, it was like, oh my gosh, what just, there's a fire. And she was very alerted, and she was very scared about that. The firefighter that came in kind of chuckled and said, man, it's no big deal. The alarm didn't go off. Hey, make sure that doesn't happen again, et cetera, et cetera. So it didn't really affect him. But that student in the front row whose parents were making meth in their bathtub and it blew up, that affected that child. So you never know how something that seems small, like a little fire in a room, it affects people different ways. The teacher, the firefighter, in the kid who went through something traumatic. And so I think it's really important, as you look at leadership, that we really dive into relationships, because relationships without or rules without relationships equals rebellion. And I really believe that when you start having all these rules and you don't have relationships, today's kid isn't buying it. They're just not. They want to know why. They don't.
Yeah.
They really do.
That's powerful. I want to thank you for coming to our SEL symposium. One of our teachers, Joe Miller, organizes that. And I'm so proud of you to hear that SEL is such a big part of Van Wert schools. And the relationship piece for us is key as well.
Yeah, and we're bummed. We can't come up this year because we're on spring break.
Well,
so
that's all right.
I'll be in Florida. I'll be thinking about you.
Send me a photo.
Yes.
You nailed it on the relationships. Our assistant principal at our high school, Adam Hicks, has written a really nice article about chronic absenteeism. And I don't want any spoilers because it's going to be published in an administrative magazine coming up, and I will share it out on the Wired Educator podcast. But Adam and our team, under his leadership, really came to the conclusion that you can get all the incentives that you want to kids, but what they really long for, what really makes the impactful difference, is the relationship that you have with them. That's why they want to get to school and do well. And it's like your dad, man. When your dad says, "Is that the best you can do?" He could have hit you over the head with a book, but it was probably more painful to hear those words, right?
Exactly. And people ask all the time, like, Mark, why are you out front of your office for half an hour before school with busing and half an hour after school? The reason why, that's my classroom. It's incredible when I go to the buildings. My bus buddies, that's what I call them. Those guys are running up to me and like, oh, he actually leaves that building and he comes out. And it's amazing what happens before and after school when it's, 80 or 90 degrees and everybody's sweating, or it's -5 degrees and you're out there bundled up, is the relationships you develop not only with the kids, but parents. Parents see you out there and they'll start talking to me. And sometimes it's a former student I didn't recognize or whatever that may be, but it's amazing. An hour a day, 30 minutes before school and 30 minutes after, the power of relationships I see in that. And people ask, why would you ever want to do that? You're a superintendent. No, that's my classroom. That's where I develop relationships. And many years later, we talk about that time outside when something funny happened, because I tell you what, outside where our office is, there's all kind of crazy things that happen, some funny, some scary, but there's always a story every day. Every day I could give you a story.
Oh, yeah. Well, Pat's big on greeting in the morning and seeing kids off at bus duty, and I am as well. As a matter of fact, I pride myself almost every day for both. They're the highlights of my day is to see the kids coming in and seeing them going home, and I love that that's important to you as well. I think that's a great sign of a leader in a school district. Mark, I got to ask you, you've been doing this job for 6 years now?
6 years, yeah.
What's it take? What does someone need to be a good superintendent? I have my thoughts, but I'm just curious to hear from you.
The first thing is you have to press the reset button every night. You have to absolutely press the reset button every night, because there may be things that pile up from the start of the day. And that's why I'm a big believer. I like to do email early, but I like to do it early and get out, because if not, you'll sit there all day long and never. I mean, you're chasing something. You're putting toothpaste back in the tube. If you want to sit there, you could do that all day long with email. Yeah. So I'm an early riser, and so I like to do that first. I like to do a thankfulness walk to really be thankful for my family. I've got 2 awesome children. My wife is a coach's wife, a superintendent's wife. She is a saint. She's a nurse. She's in a field of help, and she's always helping. She's a great sounding board for me. And she knows, she reads me like a book. So I think it takes a reset button. I think it takes courage, because every day you don't know what's going to happen. And every day there could be something that could be life-changing in your district that, quite frankly, people will look at you and see how you react. I really liked what Joe said about a couple episodes ago about Sanfilippo said about people need to know that I'm going to be consistent in how I bring it each time, because if I'm unpredictable, then people are like, okay, what's he thinking? Because here's the bottom line. Everybody knows I'm the leader. I don't have to go out and proclaim it. I don't wear a badge that says superintendent on my chest. I mean, Come
Right.
on. I try to just to fit in like everybody else, but I think it takes those kind of qualities and then getting out in the trenches and finding out from people, having conversations with your phone in your pocket, not looking at your email or your text or whatever that may be, but giving people your eyes, looking them straight in the eyes and say, how can I help? How can I help? Because if it's all about you and what you can do to get your checklist done, it's not going to ever be meaningful. And it's going to be like, okay, he's too busy for me. And I'm scared about what that bald guy may do.
I love it. I'm putting all those to use. This is a gold interview. This is really good stuff. You have a program that I'd like to learn a little bit more about. I did some research on your school, and I'm glad that, you're big on relationships. I'm glad that you're into culture work. We have a lot of similarities, Mark, but I paused on this one because under Governor Kasich, really had a big impact on seniors, senior year of high school. And I'm really proud of Port Clinton and what we're doing, but I always want to learn more. You have a program, I think it's called the CEO program, Career Education Opportunities. And I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about that and what you like about it and what it means for kids.
Yeah, that is an outstanding program, Kelly. I'm glad you asked about it. We didn't talk about this beforehand either, but Kerry Kuntz has been a 40-year veteran teacher at Van Wert. So some things he's done, I want you to think about the qualities. He's been a teacher. Yeah, he's been a teacher. He's been a business teacher as well. And he's been a school counselor, high school, and he's also coached middle school sports. So you think about what happens. He's developing relationships with 7th and 8th grade students. He coached track and basketball. And so all these students got to know Mr. Kuntz. He was also a business teacher, so he knows about financial aspects that are important as kids get older. And he also has the ability to know the schedule like no one else in our school. 10 years ago, it was actually 11 years ago, Kerry proposed, listen, I think I got an impact that would be greater and above just a school counselor. I could be a career counselor, and I have some visions of our seniors going out and about Van Wert and going into the workforce 2 periods a day. Kerry developed that program with the help of others, our former superintendent, principal. We all chipped in with different ideas, but Kerry developed it.
Okay.
And 10 years later, here we are. We have seniors in our county now. It used to be Van Wert. Now it's Van Wert, Crestview, Lincoln View, that for 2 periods a day go out to businesses in Van Wert in the surrounding area. And we have over 80 seniors going to 100 different businesses. And it's not getting coffee. It's not, shuffling papers. They're getting to experience the workforce for 2 periods a day and sometimes even get paid. And
Wow.
it goes back to that theory of not everybody's a 4-year college student. If you can learn credentials and trades, a lot of times businesses will pay for your training. And you can start out, whether it's welding or another field, making lots of money because college isn't for everybody.
Right.
So Kerry, with his business background, his coaching background and relationship background, and then his knowledge of the master schedule has created this program that has flourished and has become popular, not only statewide, but nationally. And he is retiring. And so, everybody's replaceable, Kelly, but wow.
Yeah.
We started that interview process early, and we end up hiring our Project Lead the Way engineering teacher, who's going to be phenomenal, another great program at Van Wert High School. And we hired that early because we wanted that person to shadow and mentor with Kerry Kuntz. And that's what it's all about right there. That is, really in our profession, if you can train people and be that mentor, he's going to do it different. Bob Spass' his name. He's a phenomenal teacher, a phenomenal person. He's going to do some things differently, but man, he's going to learn a half a year under Kerry Kuntz. And that program, through the support of lots of people in our community, has really become a cornerstone for our high school about getting out in the workforce to really see what maybe you want to do. But even more importantly, Kelly, sometimes you go into those job placements like, no way, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And so it's just a phenomenal program, and it's not about one person, it's about the team, but a lot of credit goes to Kerry because he pretty much developed this program from scratch 11 years ago, and it's been successful for 10 years and really been something that our seniors are looking forward to. And there's a pretty strong interview process that goes with it. They have to interview with all these different companies, so it's not a given Just because you
Yeah.
think you want to do it, it's not a given.
I'm gonna be contacting you and those two gentlemen, and I want to learn more about that. I love to hear that you're excited for the kids to be out of the school and into the businesses. That's a really new perspective to me, and that makes me excited. My buddy Rich, who I mentioned at East Knox, we often, only half jokingly, we both worked at a full service gas station in high school, and we half jokingly say that that was the equivalent of a college education, because we learned so much about how to talk to people, how to interact with people. A lot of times we call those soft skills now, but they're really essential skills, right? The conversation, do any job. We did some awful jobs and things. I think that's a really neat way. I think Van Wert's unique in looking at it that way.
Yeah, and the full circle part of the educational world with that CEO program is this. When I first started education, I taught 2 years at Ottoville, and Pat was there. And amazingly, the 7 guys that coach, we still get together. And out of those 7 guys, we had multiple superintendents, principals, teachers, lifelong friends that we still get together
That's cool.
and do
That's
things
great.
together. But I'll never forget my first interview at Van Wert. I walked into the room. It was with the superintendent, which was kind of odd, the first interview. Usually that's the last interview. And he said this, and I'll never forget it. Now, which job are you interviewing for today, Mark? The 6th or 7th grade job? And I knew right then I had no chance I was getting that job. And I didn't. I didn't get that job. And it worked out. It worked out great because I went to Ottoville and met my wife on the wall. It was my principal's niece, and it all worked out phenomenal for me. But full circle now, Kerry Kunzenite, CEO, for the education part of when they go into 2 classrooms a day, I now interview them. And we do that in the summer. The kids have to call me. I set the interviews up. They come into my office. It's usually somewhere between 5 to 15 kids. And I put them through the ringer of the interview, and I absolutely love it. So like a day like tomorrow on a Friday, which I have some things going on, but lots of Fridays I go check on the students that I interviewed and see how they're doing. I just go in the back of the room and watch them operation. Sometimes at this time of the year, they're teaching some lessons, sometimes small groups. And wow, to see the kids that I interviewed in the classroom say that this is a profession they may go into, how exciting is that?
That is.
That's so cool to me.
Yeah, that is exciting. That's really good. Well, I'm going to put you in an awkward spot here, Mark, so I apologize. So I'm sure you had dozens of awesome, inspirational teachers throughout as a student at Van Wert before you graduated in '89. But I'm curious, is there any particular person that impacted your career and your youth you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, one person I haven't mentioned yet is Dave Freilich, who was a guy that I coached with for 18 years, and he also was an administrator. Dave's a Hall of Fame coach. He won 420 games. There were many times that we fought on the bench. People thought we hate each other, but we were like brothers. Matter of fact, Dave was back in Van Wert today, and we had a great conversation. It's like we could be away from each other for a month and just catch up. He was such a huge influence on me as a beginning administrator and then as a coach on how to do things the right way, how to prepare, how to lead. He was a large man that appeared to be intimidating, but he was a teddy bear. And he was so impactful on me as a teacher, administrator, and a coach that he was a Hall of Fame coach for a reason, because he did things the right way and he showed me how to do things the right way. And I'll forever be indebted to him for that in my educational journey. And another person would be Ken Amstutz, who was that superintendent for 10 years at Van Wert. He also introduced me to my wife. It was his niece.
Oh, wow.
That was the picture on his wall when he was my principal. So those, there's so many more that I could talk, but those are 2 that have a personal side that either one of those guys I could not talk to for a month, but if I talk to him again, we talk for an hour. And that's how it was today when I talked to Dave when he was back in Van Wert. He lives in Columbus now. And just both those guys and so many more are special people to me that have had an influence. And of course, I already talked about my grandfather, my dad, my mom, my brothers and sisters were my heroes growing up too.
Yeah.
I mean, holy cow, have I been blessed. Except for getting hired on March 13th, 2020. That was kind of a curse, I think. It's crazy.
That's absolutely crazy. That's awesome. Yeah, I ask a lot of hard questions, so I'm sorry I put you on the spot. It's like me asking you which which one of your kids is your favorite. I apologize for that,
Mm.
but I want to learn, and I think it's great that I feel in education, there's a lot of opportunities. Kids do reach out and say thank you and tell us that we've made a difference. And that's one of the things that I love. But I'm going to ask you a couple more unfair questions before we jump off. So what do you think is one? I know every day is different. And like I said, I see Pat, and within 2 hours, he's had to make some really hard decisions every single day. Some at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, right? With
Yeah.
weather delays and stuff. But I'm curious, like, what is probably, of all the things that you do you feel is really the work of a superintendent? I mean, I know there's legal issues, there's disciplinary issues, starting new initiatives and things. But if you had to narrow it down, like the work of a superintendent, what would you kind of say that centers around?
The work really becomes our administrative team. Can I give them the tools and help them be the leader they want to be so they can flourish? And I never want to micromanage what they're doing. I want to be able to give them tools and resources that they can go out and just flourish their job and take it higher than I could ever imagine. We have so many good people in our district. It's not just administration, but even teachers. Can we provide something for them, whether it's a professional development or a place to go and see one thing that sparks their interest and goes and takes off, like the CEO program? Like,
Yeah.
our engineering program took off. Why? We had the old computer science class, hard and floppy disk and ROM and RAM and all that components of a class. And one of the things that we talked about is when someone retires, how should that class look? Should it be the same? We've always done it that way. Or should
Yeah.
we reimagine it? And we reimagined that to Project Lead the Way, which was engineering. And all of a sudden now it becomes real life stuff.
That's
And
cool.
now it becomes another career pathway. So I just think it's giving our administrators, our teachers, and even every single person, in our custodial staff, the tools to make our buildings look better, to give them the confidence. Hey, let's try this new cleaning supply. Let's try this new machine. Let's try whatever that may be and just make our district, better. And that's where the pride comes in. We have a phrase, Cougar Pride, in our gym. And that's the last thing our graduates do before they throw their cap is they turn to the Cougar Pride wall. That should mean something. I use this phrase every day in an email on Fridays. And I want to read this phrase that I think is what it means to be a Cougar. And it's really, really important to me as I read this. And it says this on every Friday. Van Wert Cougar Pride is bigger than one person. We work as a team. School families will have each other's back. Everyone has their own story, depending on each other to be a champion. It's different here for a reason. Van Wert City Schools has made a decision to do something special and celebrate it together. Cougar Pride is a real thing, and it all begins with trust in the process. And I get really fired up reading that. And for 1 year, Kelly, I read that to myself every day, and I'd edit it and polish it. And now that goes on my Friday email every single Friday. And that's one of the things I started culturally
awesome.
is I send an email every Friday. And if it's not sent by 8 o'clock, people are like, are you okay? Did something happen? Is something wrong? So that's in my email every Friday.
Wow. That's
And
powerful.
amongst other things.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to ask you. I think you just answered it. So I was going to ask you, like, what's a great Van Wert tradition? So everybody turns to that wall, and you have that great, awesome quote. That's powerful.
Yeah, and we just renovated our stadium, Kelly, our football stadium, and we have a wall at the end of our stadium, and it says Cougar Pride on it. I mean, you'll have to come and see it sometime. It's
Yeah.
a
I hope to.
90-year-old stadium. It's all been refurbished and we've got one more phase left. It is phenomenal what our community has bought into. We passed a levy, a bond issue for renovation of a 90-year-old stadium, and
Wow.
which is unheard of, and we passed
That
it
is unheard of.
overwhelmingly,
Yeah.
72%. And
Yeah.
so that Cougar Pride mantra that we have, that should mean a lot. I mean, that to me, and I graduated here, so that, again, we talked about advantage, disadvantage, but to me, that's an advantage that I have. Everybody has one of these bracelets, E plus R equals, oh, I'm making a mess of this. We have Van
I
Wert,
love
E
it.
plus R equals O. I wear that all the time because I believe in it. When I stop believing those things every day, then it's time for someone else to take over. And that's
Yeah.
how I feel. I still have a lot left in my tank, I have a lot of passion, but again, when that wanes or something else takes over that, then it's time for someone else to lead. And you got to be okay with that. I always say when you retire, you got to be okay with that because you're making that decision most times.
Yeah. Mark, I want to thank you so much for taking time. I know how busy superintendents are, but heck, everybody is busy. Teachers are busy. Every leader's busy. You've taken a lot of time and spent with us. I do like to end with some fun questions, but you've given us so much inspiration, and I've taken a page and a half of notes. And the really cool thing about the program I'm using now is I get AI transcripts, and I can just ask it questions like, what did Mark say? And it'll give it right back to me. So that's a lot of fun. I do want to end with some fun questions, but I want to give you just a second. Before we began the interview, you and I were talking. This is a hard time of the year. And I ask all my guests this. If you had a message to deliver to the listeners of the Wired Educator podcast, regardless of what their role is in education, what might you address to them and tell them right now?
Right now, we've been on a long stretch. We had a brutal winter this winter in Ohio, and lots of indoor. Now I know it's going to be 70 and sunny tomorrow. Embrace those things. Like I would say, every night press the reset button. Every morning go for that thankfulness walk. There are so many things to be thankful for. We are so blessed in this profession to be able to lead young people that are starving for both male and female role models. As you go through your day, don't get wrapped up in the minutia of your phone and social media, and your worth is not based on what someone says about you on social media. If you're willing to accept the praises on social media, you better be willing to accept the negative things too. That's part of the deal. And you can't get wrapped up in there. And then find something you really love. What is your relaxation? It's funny, last weekend, here was mine. My wife went to Ohio State. My daughter's a junior in social work. God bless her heart. She's going to social work. We know there's a lot of need there.
Yes.
And she stayed down in Columbus and stayed overnight. And what I did, I went to a restaurant that I enjoy, and I sat at the bar area and just talked to people as I ate. And then I went to the movies by myself, and I saw movies, for whatever reason, are my relaxation. Everybody has a different one. It may be lifting weights. It may be, working in a garage on a car or whatever. I'm not handy at all, but I love movies because for 2 hours, my phone is away and I'm not thinking about anything but, enjoying the movie, eating some good popcorn, having a Diet Coke, and everything goes away. So find those things you love. I still love basketball. I don't coach anymore. But I on a Saturday morning, I drive to Lima and do a talk show radio. I'm just one of the guests for 2 hours.
Is that right?
It's an escape time. Find things that you can escape to. I escaped for 2 years out in the land of sports. I'm not worried about a teacher contract. I'm not worried about negotiations. I'm not worried about something that happened at school. I'm not worried about an angry parent. I'm just it's 2 hours of my life. So, that is really, really important. To press the reset button at night, take that walk in the morning, and then all the things in between, find somewhere where you can escape to the things you love because the job's always going to be there. It's 24/7. And so that would be my advice to people as they walk that road of life, which is very curvy.
Well, I mean this sincerely, and I want you to lean in a little bit, Mark, and I want you to really feel these words. You've helped me personally. Like what you shared tonight helped me. And I'm going to be a better man tomorrow for it. So thank you for that very much. I really appreciate your time tonight. I felt the Cougar pride tonight on this interview. And your district should be very proud of you. And a person would be lucky to work for Van Wert Schools. So I like to end with some fun questions. I was going to begin it with a book, but I'm a movie guy too. So I got to know, man, what's one of the best movies? What's one of Mark Bagley's favorite movies, or a movie that just was really influential?
I'd say one movie, it's a little bit violent, but I love Braveheart based on just the loyalty aspect of that movie. And there's obviously some moments in that movie that people aren't loyal, but just when you fight for something so much and so bad, this was for a country that what it takes to sometimes win is really, really ugly, dirty, hard work. In this case, lots of people died. And so that's a movie that is really, really powerful to me that every few years I watch. And obviously the sports aspect of me is Hoosiers is one that, yearly this March Madness that I watch, just because it's a feel-good movie that ends in a really cool way.
Yeah, I like that. I'm never going to mess with you, Braveheart's your favorite movie, man. You're a tough guy. That's awesome
I'm
stuff.
not sure about that.
All right. I am a gadget kind of guy. I do like technology, but I'll be honest with you. As I get older, I'm getting a little overwhelmed with it. We're a little plugged in too much. Does Mark Bagley have a favorite go-to tool or gadget or something that just helps you with life that you enjoy?
Well, I think AI has been really, if you use it the right way, it can be really helpful to short chain, cut things. And I'm not a big fan of just putting something there and just using it. I think
Right.
it's important to write something, throw it in there, and then it comes out, and then you tweak it to be your personality. Like people know how you write. And if you
Yeah.
just use AI, it's like right away you can, in interviews and resumes and those guys, you can pick that out right away. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa, this isn't real. But I think that's important. I got an Apple Watch last year finally. I'm one of the last people to get one, I think. I like
Good for
tracking
you. Yeah.
my health aspect, because obviously you can tell by my face I love food and those kind of things. So I'm not as fit as Pat Atkins,
He's
but
pretty fit.
yeah, but I do think that the different gadgets on the iPhone, like, and also the watch that can track steps and just track
Yeah.
some of those things, your heart rate. I kind of getting into some of those things now as I get older,
I like it.
55, you start having weird things happen to your body. And so it's kind of fun to track some of those things. So that's kind of the gadgets. I've never been a video game guy, but movies are something that I love to relax to. So I'm more of a movie guy.
That's cool. I'm a big Apple Watch guy, so we'll have to do like a step challenge or something. It is my go-to, my favorite tool. I love that. For you as a leader, like, because you're close with Pat, I know you're going to have a good answer for this one. What is a non-negotiable for Mark Bagley? Absolutely non-negotiable in any aspect of your life, personal
Loyalty.
or
I am a
loyalty.
huge loyalty guy. Like, I'm gonna work like crazy to serve others and do whatever I can to help them. But it does become challenging when things it's not reciprocated, and that's when you have to make tough decisions sometimes. So that loyalty is a huge thing with me. And again, I do want to mention who my first mentor was too, Scott Mangus, he got the difficult job of Put-in-Bay
On the
superintendent.
island.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the long story short there is our wives were in each other's wedding. So
Get out of here.
all these coincidences that happen.
You are connected to everybody. Yeah.
So we go to Put-in-Bay quite a bit. We're gonna go up a couple times this summer and spend time with Scott and Jill up there. So it's just I think it's important, as you look at things that loyalty is a non-negotiable. And I've had tremendous amount of people, like I said, that have been mentors and loyal to me. Despite some of the mistakes I make, I make mistakes every day. And I tell people
Sure.
that I'm gonna make a mistake.
Yeah.
I'm an excitable guy. I get sped up. Sometimes you make decisions quick because, hey, I want to get this done and get it on a checklist. That's when I'm at my worst. I'm at my best when I can be calculated and really look at what's best for the whole.
Yeah. I like that. And I think part of the loyalty part, I think good superintendents, from my observation, are well connected. They have a good network and they know who they can trust. And you guys kind of bounce ideas off one another and come to conclusions together. Is that fair to say?
Very much so. I mean, there's nothing better than when you have an issue and you have a problem, and this can be a lonely job. It can be very,
Yeah.
it's a unicorn one of one, and it's so important to have a network of people. And I would add David Axler to that. He's the
Yeah.
Bass executive director. Dave, the very first conference I went to, Dave was on the same golf, foursome as me. I didn't know who Dave was, and we
I
started
love those
talking.
stories.
Yeah, we started talking, the next thing it's like, "Whoa, this guy's, pretty important," and I'm slapping it all over the place, and my ball's going it's like army golf, left, right, left, and then my ball's going everywhere, and,
I've never
Dave
heard that one. Yeah.
Dave's looking at me like, "What's this guy doing?" Like, he is like, I'm left-handed, I'm just swinging as hard as I can, the ball's flying everywhere,
That's
but
great.
what a great guy Dave is, and he's a really good leader for the superintendents of Ohio.
I agree. And you're pretty awesome too, Mark. I thank you. I could talk to you all night, but I do want to end with one final question. And I'm just curious, like, what is next for Van Wert schools? What's next for you? Where are we headed? We mentioned AI earlier. Maybe what's something you're leaning into or looking at and scratching your head saying this could be a good thing.
Yeah, there's some facility things we want to get done in Van Wert that those are the bricks and mortar things that you have to think about to again leave it in a better place. But really, educationally, we really want to keep on going farther. We're a project-based learning school. So we are big in presentation. We are big at, those soft skills that really, when you get into the workforce, that are important. So what does best practice look like? How can we make sure that we balance doing project-based learning with the nuts and bolts of the educational process? How can we make sure that our culture is one that can push us forward? How can we make sure that with social emotional learning, these all come together in building relationships, because kids can't learn when they're unregulated. And the culture of your school will never be higher than the highest adult. You can never go higher than your highest adult. So we have to make sure we keep on raising our adults. And that's everybody. Custodians, teachers, administrators, myself, always being lifelong learners, because our kids can't go above that. So we have to raise it so they can. And we can say all we want about, well, they come from a tough home, or, well, this and that. That may be true, but we got to find a way. It's our job to give ourselves a chance. How do you give yourself a chance? By those things I just talked about.
Yeah. I wish I had gone to the project-based learning question earlier, because I had that on my list, and that may have to be a future episode or a phone call in the future, because I really want to learn about it.
Yeah. I would love to talk about that with you, because I'm a firm believer in that, based on a trip I took to San Francisco when a kindergartner gave me a tour of their school, and I was bought hook, line, and sinker, because this kindergarten was looking me in the eye and leading me around as a 45-year-old adult. I'm like, I'm in. This is what presentation, this is what it should look like. If a kindergarten can do this, then I know a 16-year-old can do it too.
Very cool. Well, Pat and I might just be jumping in and heading over to Van Wert and check things out soon. Mark, I want to thank you. I obviously really enjoyed talking with you tonight. My apologies for going over a little longer than usual. I've learned a ton. I'm inspired. I'm pumped up. Tomorrow's Friday, and now I got a lot of tools in my toolbox to help me do my job better. And I really want to thank you for that. And I hope you and I can collaborate in the future. And I want to thank you for being on the Wired Educator Podcast.
Thanks a lot, Kyle. I appreciate that. And I guarantee you'll be wearing red and white tomorrow, and I'll be wearing scarlet and gray tomorrow. And a few years ago, I had to wear one of your jerseys after your football team beat us, and Pat and I had a bet on the jersey, and the one he gave me was a little snug. I'm not sure if it was on purpose or I weighed too much.
I bet he did that on purpose. Yeah.
He did. And so we've got great school colors both. I know you'll have it on tomorrow. I guarantee I'll have on scarlet and gray. And I'm just I've listened to your podcast now for a while, because you've had some tremendous guests on here. I'm honored, to crack the top 300, after 11 years that you've done this. And so you do a great job. I've watched you be an artist. I've watched you speak with passion. That I'm up front. I'm like, I'm feeling the energy. Like, let's go. Like, it's like Animal House. Who's with me? And then we all run out the door, and maybe no one follows us, but we're going to do it. So I'm really excited. This pumps me up. I'm tired right now, but this hour or whatever got me fired up. I'm ready for Friday.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. What a great interview with Mark. I can't thank him enough. I'm a better man and a better leader for having this conversation with Mark today. Wired Educator Podcast thanks you for listening to our episode, and we hope you'll check the show notes for links to everything mentioned in the interview and in the pre-roll. If you'd like to work with me, Kelly Croy, if you enjoyed what you heard today and you'd like to bring some of these conversations to your campus, I'll be available to speak at your next event, your kickoff, or your opening day, or work directly with your teachers, staff, or administrators, because leadership matters. Let's give the world something worth following. I hope you reach out to me at kelly@kellycroy.com. So if you'd like your book, product, service, conference, or website highlighted in the pre-roll, please email me at kelly@kellycroy.com. Reviews, I love them. Please leave an honest review of the show and share it with me, and I'll share it on the next episode. Your ratings and reviews really help, and I read each and every one, and I hope you'll share this podcast out with your staff, your colleagues, your family, and your friends. I hope you subscribe to my newsletter and subscribe to the podcast. But most importantly, I want to thank you for taking time from your busy week to listen to the show, to level up as an educator and leader, to make a difference in the lives of students. You're awesome. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the Wired Educator Podcast at www.wirededucator.com.